We'll start with the Saints. Will Derek Carr reignite the Saints? That's kind of the question that I have in mind when I think about New Orleans. Carr's 32 years old. He's replacing what would have been a 35-year-old Andy Dalton at quarterback. He signed a 4-year, $150 million deal this offseason. 2022 is one of Carr's worst seasons in a long time. When you think of Derek Carr, generally he's been one of the only bright spots on the Raiders for a long time now, and he's carried them. He's the emotional leader. You know, I know a lot of Raiders fans who swear by him being a top 10 quarterback in the league, coming in that 9 or 10 spot, probably overrating him, but he's generally had some great seasons. And last year with Devontae Adams coming in, sky-high expectations, but we're not big Josh McDaniels fans on this podcast. We don't really think he's that good of a coach, and it was a disaster season. Carr had his highest interception rate of his career. He's generally a super accurate passer. This is kind of a crazy stat. He's the 4th lowest off-target rate from 2017 to 2021. Last year, it skyrocketed up to 12.7%, 25th out of 33 quarterbacks. So just an off year for Carr all around. I don't think he's as bad as we saw last year, but I'll go to you first, Ziggy. Can Derek Carr actually take the Saints back to the playoffs? Like, is he good enough to lift this team from where they were last season?
I think if the question is, can Derek Carr take this team back to the playoffs? I think the answer is absolutely. I don't think Derek Carr is their quarterback of the future, but he is the quarterback of now, right? He's a player who can step in and give them a floor at quarterback. Derek Carr's always sort of in that borderline top 10 spot. In some games, he'll give you a much better performance. So absolutely, like the Saints have a good receiver in Chris Olave. Rashid Shaheed is okay. Michael Thomas might eventually be healthy. When he's not suspended, Alvin Kamara will be good. Like, there's plenty of guys here. The offense is not the big concern for me on the Saints. I think the offense will be just fine.
Oh, so you have some defensive concerns? We'll get there in a second.
What's that guy's name?
Jack was laughing
Rashid
out loud
Shaheed.
Yeah.
As you were going over the receivers. What do you think, Jack? Do you like Derek Carr to bounce back this season?
When you talk about going to the playoffs, I agree with Ziggy. I'd say, yeah, like that's a absolutely reasonable expectation. I did lose a little bit of trust in Derek Carr, and I know he made it clear. Mm-hmm. Like, it was obvious he didn't want to be in Vegas.
He wasn't even there at the end of the season.
He didn't want to be there. He said it over and over again. But when you have the best receiver in the world and still go 6 or 7, 6 and...
I'm sorry, it was Justin Jefferson on the Raiders last season?
Top 3 receiver in the world and still bust like they busted. I lost a bit of trust. But I think a change of scenery, a weak division can be beneficial. So when it comes to going to the playoffs, he's good enough where he can absolutely win that division, get a home playoff game, and maybe even win that game.
Great home field advantage in New Orleans.
Yeah, I think the ceiling for the Saints with Carr is probably the divisional round, but can they get there? Yes.
Okay. And something that we all said when talking about the Saints right now, and we'll probably say it a lot more times throughout this episode, is weak division. Because that's what I really think you can focus on.
They're not that good. Yeah, they're not that good.
Yeah, the team is just okay. Like, Carr coming from the Raiders to the Saints, the Raiders have a better offense. There are better weapons, better offensive line. It's generally just the Raiders defense is atrocious, so it's a huge step up. Even though the Saints defense isn't great, and Ziggy, we'll get to that in a second, the Raiders defense was so bad last season. I mean, that secondary is just miserable. That coming over to the Saints was just going to be refreshing to have an average unit for Derek Carr. Again, we'll see what happens with Alvin Kamara. We don't know if he'll be suspended, how long. He probably will be, it seems like, at this point. Big question mark around Michael Thomas. A lot of ifs outside of really Chris Olave for this team right now. What concerns you, Ziggy, about the defense? Because generally that's been very good for New Orleans. That's been the staple of their team since Drew Brees really retired, is how good that defense has been. So what's concerning you?
And the defense was good last year too, don't get me wrong. They finished as a top 10 defense. The problem is the entire front seven, except Cameron Jordan's gone. The back seven, they lost some big contributors, right? Guys like PJ Williams. They struggled with injuries a lot in the secondary last year. So with all the players leaving, they're going to need guys like Isaiah Foskey, who are coming in. Big Isaiah Foskey fan.
It's your voice.
Breesy too. From Clemson.
Yeah, they need Breesy and Foskey and some other guys to become immediate big contributors. And that's a lot to ask, right? I think the offense will be average, maybe slightly above average, depending on how many games Alvin Kamara misses. But with all the new faces on defense, I mean, you look, the only 3 players who have really proven much of anything are Cameron Jordan, Marshawn Lattimore, and Tyrann Mathieu. Right? Marcus May's good. Demario Davis is all right, but there's not a lot of proven contributors. So I'm worried that there's going to be some growing pains pretty quickly.
Saints fans will not be happy about that Demario Davis and Marcus May comment right there.
Look, they're good players, but have they shown themselves to be players who can be leaders on a defense and take over games?
Yes, I mean, Demario Davis has absolutely shown that, but
not in the past couple of years.
Here's what I'll say. Of those guys you mentioned, Cameron Jordan's 35, or will be in his 35-year-old season. Mathieu is going to be in his age 32 season. Demario Davis, age 35 season. It's a weird mix on this team of those older stars who are kind of starting to decline a little bit. I mean, Mathieu was very good last year. But then you have, like you said, these new guys like Brian Breesy and Isaiah Foskey. One really interesting point you guys said, I shouldn't pick this guy as the non-quarterback player to watch. But Caden Ellis leaves for Atlanta at linebacker. They're bringing back into the starting rotation Pete Werner, who was excellent in 2021, and in 2022 started to regress a little bit. And while Ellis was rising up the ranks, kind of made a switch there. Can Werner come in? Like, he's another young guy where this defense will really find out if it all gels together, and you get that kind. You know how every once in a while you get a nice mix of veterans who still have it and rookies who break out. Then everything clicks. But this could take a turn for the worst if those veterans decline at a faster rate than you're expecting and the rookies don't take that jump. So there's, a lot of question marks in the NFC South as a whole, a lot of question marks for the Saints defense. I actually think the offense will be all right. I think it should be stable with Carr.
Yeah, I think the Saints, when you talk about on the defensive side of the ball, it'll be just a meshing thing. But I do think that unless there's a serious decline in these guys in their mid-30s, which I don't really see a serious decline, they'll be good enough because I think the skill and talent these guys have with the youngsters and the vets, they're all very good defensive players. And I think it just comes to meshing and gelling with some new faces who they haven't really played with before. But the thing with the Saints, like my bottom line, is I will probably say that they're my early pick to win the NFC South. Either them or, I mean, depending on Bryce Young, depending on the Bucs with like Baker, but I'd probably see Derek Carr makes his team good enough to win the NFC South.
Well, there it is.
That's my bottom line.
Why finish the show now? We'll make you wait for Ziggy and I's predictions, but Derek Carr, they are the favorite for a reason right now.
Do the Saints still have Quan?
Quan Alexander?
Yeah, do they still have him still?
Can you check that, Ziggy? I don't remember seeing him when looking over the.
He's a free agent currently.
Yeah, okay. I didn't.
He was with the Jets last year. I remember.
Oh, that's right. That's where he went.
But I mean, look, if the Saints last year being at dead last in pass rush win rate made you excited, and them losing their top pass rush contributor in David Onyemata to the Falcons, if that gets them excited, if they think that means they're going to have an elite defense this year, we'll see. Marcus
Davenport gone as well. Yeah, you said dead last in pass rush win rate. A couple other categories before we move on. 31st in takeaways, 29th in third down conversion rate allowed, 24th in run defense.
It's not a leap.
Surprising.
It's not a leap, but look who you have to stop.
Exactly.
I mean, you have to. They could be 5-1 in the division.
Well,